You have to walk the talk. You have to be authentic as a leader. If you're not doing it, they see that.
It is entirely universal. There's other people who are going through this.
For me, a great leader needs to be able to marry three things: vision, systems, and people.
Welcome to Leadership Moments. If this is your first time, and if you are returning, thank you for your support.
This show is about leaders from all walks of life, leadership tips, and maybe even a little of what you wouldn't expect to help you in leadership.
We would appreciate it if you tell someone else about our podcast as we strive to support all leaders that want to just be better.
Let's get on with the show.
Today, our guest is Mike Armistead. Mike is a serial entrepreneur and corporate leader who has built and grown technology companies for more than 30 years. His career began at Pure Software, Reed Hastings' first startup before Netflix, as well as being a co-founder to multiple successful companies like Fortify Software, Respond Software, and now Pulse Security AI. Currently at Pulse Security AI, he helps organizations close the gap between technical security tools and the broader business strategies that they are meant to support. He is also a Stanford-educated engineer and has coached more than 500 youth sports, an experience that has shaped his beliefs that leadership is about matching strategies to people and situations. Today, we are going to talk about how you can move between large corporations and startups back and forth, be successful in both, and how to hire people along the way. Let's jump in. Mike, I'm so excited that you're on our show today because when we were talking before the show, you've had a great career that has gone from large companies to small companies to being a co-founder multiple times and working with some great founders in the past as well. And you have, had to hire people and help them succeed. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that just at first of like, when you talk about hiring people and working with people, like what are some things that you think of first?
I think it is absolutely the core of anything that I've done in my career, and it really determines whether you're going to be successful or not. I think, in fact, whether you're sitting on a big corporate campus, in a sea of cubes, or whether you're in the basement like I am now in my startup, the success of the what is about finding the right who across the board. And that kind of thing has really taken me through the years because it's been a quest for finding the right people and the right puzzle pieces that you have to help make that success. And I think, as part of that, there are similarities that cut across, or core elements that cut across how I think about hiring and the person that I'm after. And there's also, as you noted, the big differences sometimes between, doing it for a startup and doing it for a large corporation.
I love that. And first of all, it's not just about filling the seats, it's about filling the seats with the right people. And the right people can vary depending on the situation. And there's a lot of people that have grown up in a startup world and feel that they can't go to large corporations, and vice versa, where I've grown up in a large organization and that means I probably couldn't perform well in a startup. And I think you are one of those success cases to prove that wrong. And so, like, what are some key factors that you would love to tell our listeners of like how they can say, yes, I can switch between these really large organizations. And then later I want to get back to like how we find out the right who. But let's start with just the transition between large and small.
Yeah, I think it gets into what I would call maybe the DNA of the person, or of what they're striving to do, or how they approach a problem in that. And I think, because I started my career in a large corporation, back in the 80s, and I was new right out of school. As much as you want to start something new, it wasn't as part of the fabric of the culture, which it is now. I mean, I have grown kids; they all want to do startups right away, and it's kind of interesting. But I did my time, 7-8 years in a large corporation, and that made it a little more difficult to get hired by a startup, I found. But it was, I'd say, three core elements, or this DNA, that helped me actually get there and then succeed kind of in that role. And the first is aligning to the mission, whatever it is. And by what I mean by that is whether you're in a large corporation and you're in a little small group in that large corporation, there still is a mission. And you know, you whether if you're doing it just for a paycheck, your performance is going to show. And so you look for people that can align to that. Now, obviously, in a startup, the alignment to that mission gets even more important, and it's a stronger factor into things. Uh, the second thing is I'd call it a curiosity quotient. You know, you're in a career or a job really for the long term. I think it's the right approach to think it that way, and you need to be learning all the time. You rarely find stagnant leaders in this way that don't want to learn, uh, leading successful companies or successful groups. And so being curious, I think, helps the transition, whether it's from large to small or small to large, within it. And the last one, this is a little different than maybe your question is, but it's part of the DNA that I absolutely adhere to. Is that uh, there's kind of a no jerk policy that I like
I
to
love it.
espouse because life's too short. And in fact, I long borrowed something from the 80s. Remember, there's a firm called Anderson Consulting, which became Accenture eventually, but super large, like maybe 500,000 people, in it, even at that time. And they said that they would only hire swans. So what's a swan? Well, a swan, S, smart, uh, W, hardworking, A, ambitious, and N, nice. And I remember that threw me the first time I heard it. It was like, what? And then I started thinking about it. And it was like, you know what? I've met plenty of smart, hardworking, ambitious jerks in my life. And I don't really want to work with them, and you know, kind of joking aside, having someone who's toxic in a group, it is like adding some ink to water. It just ruins the whole thing. That, and sometimes that toxicity is they don't want to be there, and this is back to that alignment, uh, part of it. Or they are just a person that just doesn't get along well with people. And I've never, on the other side, the most pleasurable kind of companies I've worked with and where we became really good friends and everything like that is because we respected and were nice to each other. And I think that's such a key thing, especially in today's world.
Yeah. What I love about that is it's not just the skills and the competencies. It is just be a good human, right? Like it just respect each other for who you are. And it is so important for the success of a company that you respect each other because when you respect each other, you trust each other, you lean on each other, you win together, you lose together. And I think that I'm glad you said that. I think it's so important and a key piece that when we talk about what you need to be and as a leader, we don't talk about that all the time. So I'm really glad that you added that.
Yeah, and well, I'm glad you added the part about the respect thing because that doesn't mean you agree all the time. In fact, it's just that the way you disagree ends up being something you should think about as a leader because uh and that in various forms. A lot of people I think about that in the moment. And yeah, there is in the moment of disagreeing the right way. Um, but I know a technique I use, and in fact I used it this week, was I could tell one of my team members was really looking grumpy on the video. Uh, and so I immediately followed the meeting up. Just pinged him, said, "Hey, get on." And I just said, "Why are you looking grumpy? What was that all about?" And people really appreciate that, right? Because it's just like they can air what was making them grumpy. And end up it wasn't really so much grumpiness in this case. This was more of just feeling overwhelmed, kind of thing. But it's good to get that out. And but I think that's a part of not being a jerk, being nice, because you're thinking about the other person a little bit more. and how you can help them make success, which is very key to leadership. Right? You're trying to make them successful in what they do.
Yeah. And what I love about that is you're talking about how important it is for a leader to recognize your surroundings and your audience and how things may pivot and change. And the fact that you said, okay, this person's not like they're normally. And so I need to reach out to them and get them, like, just the fact that they got to vent, right? Probably helped them quite a bit. And that build that trust for you of like, wow, he's really got my back, right? He's taking care of me and sees when I'm hurting, because we all have our moments. So great example. Love that story. And you talked about really understanding the when you worked for a large corporation for multiple years and that the startup was like, I don't know if we want to hire you. And me being a leader in a large corporation for multiple years, I was on the other end of that when I was interviewing people that worked at startups. I was like, I don't know if I want to hire you. And it was because I don't know if you're ready for the political value that we have here, that things will run slower. Like if you're used to running at fast pace and going, so it actually does work both ways. And I love what you said about it. Really, it's like, are you passionate about the mission? Are you wanting to learn and grow? And if you can express that, like, it doesn't matter which direction you're going, they're going to want to hire you. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times I liken, because I've done this like 4 or 5 times in my career. Because even when I was in a startup, I've had 3 times where we got bought by a much larger company, and so I was back into that thing, and then maybe uniquely, I stayed for many years afterwards after being in the startup, and it's because of what you said, Stacy. It's the mission alignment ended up being an important part because while it wasn't as fast paced and I could just make decisions and I could, really move where I wanted to, the impact that I could have out there was larger, and yeah, and I think it was a larger sales team. It was a larger market and marketing that could be done, and it was very fulfilling to do that in a way that the startup was fulfilling, getting something off the ground and off that launch pad and successful in its own right. But then this was fulfilling in a different way, and I do also like what you said there because I think if you liken it, I often kind of talk about the startups like a speedboat and the large corporations like a big cruise ship. And you act differently,
Yeah.
and the skills you have and the way you act has to it. And you really nailed one core part of it. When you're on the cruise ship, um, there's going to be bureaucracy. There's going to be things a little bit slower, a little bit. It depends if there's more consensus or not, but it's going to feel like that within it. And, a lot of startup people that they'll lose their soul if they if they encounter that. And you have to be ready, or you have to pick people that they want to have more of an impact. They want to have more stability. They want to have less ambiguity about things. That's the kind of the system that they're buying into on the cruise ship. Um, they're also on the cruise ship, and there's lots of areas of the cruise ship that can be fun, and are different. And so there's opportunity that you get in that large corporation that's also there. Um, and but I guess the final part is you're very much uh tired to excel at a particular thing in the larger corporation. Well, just let's juxtapose that to, the speedboat. Speedboat, not very comfortable usually to sit in, but it's thrilling. You're 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 moving along, but, there's bumps and things like that, and, you gotta find people that thrive on ambiguity in a lot of ways. You don't have answers. You could pretend you have answers, but you don't really have answers, and, so people that exist within that, and that's why that DNA of the learning and the curiosity and stuff is also key in the small company because you might be called upon to fill many roles, not just one role, and you gotta do it. You're driving the boat and you're bailing somehow. And you have to do that, as well. There's lots of stories I have here, of things, I one of my co-founders in the current company, I tried to convince 3 or 4 times before to come into a startup because I just knew the way he approached problems and things, he'd be very successful. He was very successful in the corporate world, but I knew this, um, and he kept saying no, and it was fine because the no was his family life. He wanted that stability. He wanted to have more of the known and how it would progress, how his career would progress through things. Um, and it wasn't until uh, my company was acquired by Hewlett Packard, and I was running a division in Hewlett Packard, and I said, "Hey, we're a big company. Why don't you come work with me now?" And he did. And 6 months later, I just had to tell him, "Hey, you work harder and you have the right, you know, orientation that you'll be very successful in a startup. So if we start another company again, I want you to go there with me and do that." And the key thing, I guess, the speedboat part is that equity part is a really important part of it. Is you're an owner now, and being an owner, you both have responsibilities, but you have potentially a great reward off the back end of that. And that's what I wanted him to get to. Yay, that's the way it happened. And we had a great 4 years of being in the startup. We got acquired, and for hundreds of millions of dollars. So it was a good outcome for everybody. And he proved, and I was right on this one. He was really good in the startup. And so we've started another company, and that's what we're doing now. Yeah.
That's awesome. And what I love about that story is we tell ourselves stories of what the other side is like. And so, whether we're in a startup, we tell ourselves stories of what it's like in the large corporation and vice versa. And you laid out some pieces that probably negated some of those parts of the story that weren't right, where it's like, okay, we know that people in startups work really hard, and maybe I don't want to work that hard. And you're like, no, you're actually working harder than most people that are in startups. And so, recognizing that, I think, was really, really important to point that out. And so, getting to the facts and, helping us understand, okay, what story am I telling myself right now? And how can I know that it's a fact rather than a story? So I love that.
Absolutely. And again, you brought up something earlier that I think is key, is you got to position yourself the right way. So whether your background is in startups and now you want to join a large company, or your background is large company, you want to join a smaller one, you got to think of that positioning. And it really ends up being about those elements and those facts in a lot of ways about what is going to then position you for them to be comfortable knowing that you're going to be successful in these things. And yeah, and it gets back to some of these core things that you said. It's maybe myth busting a little bit. Is that your whatever your environment, they're going to want to hear that you're going to go after it. You're going to go after the mission. You're going to work hard to do it. You're going to work with other people well. All that kind of thing. And then it's that alignment to that mission and belief in that. I know in startups, you do pay a little bit more attention to, is this person really jazzed about what you're going to be doing? In large corporations, you really want that person too. You want them to be jazzed, and that's why I said maybe that's really a thing about think about how you can impact so many more people in this large corporation versus the thrill of getting something off the ground.
So I have to ask, because you've worked with so many different people and in different areas and large and small, and thinking about what your company's doing today, like, what do you believe is one uncomfortable truth that leaders need to know right now?
We're in a technology discontinuity, and it's called artificial intelligence. Our company does use artificial intelligence to deliver, our product. And I'm not saying that because there's a lot of hype and being old enough to have lived and been an executive in the Web 1.0 hype, I very much recognize that we as humans love to just think things are going to happen tomorrow that may happen a decade later. Because I remember being in that web, and oh my gosh, shopping is going to change. There'll be no more brick and mortar stores. it took 10, 15 years for Amazon to really get all the way there, and for us to feel comfortable with going to Amazon because they sold books, and I would never buy a shirt from them. But the uncomfortable truths were in this. I do think artificial intelligence is one of these things that is going to make a change of things, and it's not so much being fearful of it or doing that, but I think the uncomfortable truth is you got to learn about it, and the way you learn about it is you have to use it because you'll start to see what's good and where it's bad or where it's not so good. And there's some really funny quirks about artificial intelligence too, like it so confidently can make something up and try to convince you that it's true and it speaks in such proper grammar that you feel that confidence and and then if you think about it, it's like, why are you confident? And it may not be. It may just totally make it up because that's how those models have been trained. They've been trained to speak confidently. And so there's things like that you just have to use it and get comfortable with it. Just like, in the 90s we had to use the internet and we had to think and get comfortable with it. Um and then you can use that in your career, in your leadership, in your things to then use it to an advantage, and speak very plainly about it then. But if you're just reading about it and you're just listening to the hype for or against it, you won't be authentic in that way, and you need to be authentic in this when there's a transition uh, because there's going to be a lot of people just jabbering about it, and you know, it's yeah, you don't know who to believe.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the one key piece that you put out there is like, you can't be what I call the lawyer about it, where you're reading it, but you're not actually using it. And so just try it out, just do it. And I think a lot of people are now, and there's probably listeners right now like saying, really? Are there people that haven't tried it? Yes. And there are actually many leaders that haven't tried it yet. So believe it or not, I actually talk to people quite often that are like, yeah, I haven't tried it yet. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, right? It seems crazy. So you definitely need to try it
And
out.
the trying isn't just do like what is equivalent of a search and seeing what it gives out to you. It's actually think of a project and see if you can get that AI to do that project for you. That's the trying out because that's where you see a little bit more complexity, a little bit more, and honestly, you'll see the power of what that thing could do too. And yeah, that's the trying out, not just let it read your emails or something. That's not really trying out.
Right, right. Yeah, great call. Okay, so we talked about hiring the right people and filling the seats with the right people. What are some things for our listeners to consider when they're hiring to make sure that they do pick the correct ones?
Well, there's a lot to that. I mean, I think a lot of it is how do you you know how you do your interviewing, and then what do you do, where do you take that and how you do it. I tell you, I over the years have become the f the biggest fan of I go to references and I try to find backdoor references and things all the time because interviews, you're gonna get a picture of a person, but it's pretty staged. The whole thing, and you can try all your techniques about behavioral interviewing and assign different people different you know places to prod and poke the person and then come together and get a consensus, and those are all very good techniques, but it's staged, and it's so much better to find out either from the references that they give you, or if even better, if you could find someone who knows the person and could talk about them in their professional life. That's good. And no, too, I mean, people want to say nice things about other people, and that's fine. You're not really there to discover often the some deep dark secret. You're there just to uncover how they would uh be according to the attributes that we talked about earlier. One technique that I've used in this, and I use it all the time, is even with their references, I ask, uh, I'm hiring this person. What could I do to support them to make them the most successful? What are the things that I need to pay attention to so that they're most successful? I found that people like that because they can say something that may not, that may not be totally just a glowing review for them. They can kind of say what would be something that they do need to be bolstered on, and that's a great clue because me as the person trying to do the hiring, I might be fine with that because it's like, hey, I know I can bolster that, and that's great. But if I didn't know it, I wouldn't know to watch for that, and that's to me that's one technique that I use all the time that I really like that I've gotten good results for.
What I say to people is, what role are they most successful in and why? Because then, if this person has experience with them in different situations, they can tell you what it is. Or if they've never been in that role, but they know of their strengths, then they can talk about that. And that's especially helpful, especially for technical roles. Then they'll say things that are more technical or not technical. And it just gives you clues to where their strengths and opportunities are. So I love that you say it, like give them an opportunity to say something positive, but they also get an opportunity to say where their opportunities are.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Anything else when considering hiring people that our listeners should consider?
No, I think as a summary, it's, whether it's the speedboat or the cruise ship, you're looking for indicators of those attributes that you think will most make that person successful. And I think it's less about, um, it could be less about the particulars of what is going to go in the roles and much more of can you imagine this person being successful within it? Now I say that, and I will tell you over my career, the one of the more pleasant surprises that I have with people are those that are doing some other role, but they take on a challenge and you find out they're just unbelievably great at at that challenge. And you realize, there's that utility player that you could plug into any kind of problem and they'll just get it done. And it's probably one of the attributes that I didn't talk about that I do find that's incredibly helpful and even to your notion about what you try to get out during an interview is it's about results. It's not really about knowledge of a topic or how well they could speak to it or things like that. It's like, what results did you get? Whether and then in whatever environment. And I think being results oriented is, if you get people that strive to do that, that's a kind of that ambition part of the swan, notion too. You're gonna find a home for them. May not be exactly what you hired them for, but you're gonna find a home for them in your organization.
All right, there's that sound. It's time for our fun questions. Are you ready for our fun questions?
Ooh, I think so.
All right, they're easy. They're easy. All right, so for entertainment, do you go for reality TV or documentaries?
Documentaries.
Documentaries, yeah. I love my documentaries too. I totally agree with that. All right, next one. Are you a carry-on only traveler or do you check a bag without hesitation?
Yeah, carry on.
Carry on. Yeah, yeah. And what's the thought behind that? Is it like just to get like I carry on because I'm too impatient. I don't want to wait at the baggage claim. What what's your thought process on carry on only?
I'm with you on the no waiting part. Also, I'm fairly light packer.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your insights today. I know our listeners are walking away with a lot of good nuggets that they'll be able to put into play and really appreciate your time with us.
If you enjoyed the show, please go to leadershipmomentspodcast.com to subscribe to the podcast or on your favorite player, as well as follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn.
You can also send us a message on what you like and don't like, or what guest you want us to have on the show.
So until next time.
This is Stacey Castor, and what doesn't challenge you won't change you.
And I'm Tracy Ann Palmer. Be the change you wish to see in the world.